Welcome to Channel's Business Globe with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London, where global power, policy and markets intersect. Coming up on today's show, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer warns the war in the Middle East will have direct consequences for the UK economy as rising energy prices begin to feed through into growth and inflation. With forecasts downgraded and pressure building on households and businesses, what does this latest global shock mean for the UK outlook? I'll be getting insight from Dan Smith, economist at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. And the United Kingdom tightens its immigration system, raising visa fees across the board while accelerating removals under a new agreement with Nigeria, in a move that could reshape travel, study and work opportunities for thousands. As costs rise and enforcement strengthens, what does this mean for Nigerians navigating the system, from students and skilled workers to families and businesses? We'll be getting legal insight from consultant Dr. Jennifer Obaseki. Then later, I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. But first, King Charles III will travel to the United States later this month for a state visit with President Donald Trump, in a move that comes at a delicate moment for UK-US relations. Buckingham Palace confirmed the trip will take place in late April, with Washington expected to host the key engagements, including a state banquet at the White House. The visit will be the first of its kind in nearly 2 decades and comes as both countries navigate tensions linked to the war in the Middle East and wider geopolitical uncertainty. Officials say the trip will focus on reinforcing the transatlantic relationship, with plans expected to highlight both historic ties and current strategic cooperation. It will also coincide with celebrations marking 250 years of American independence, a central theme expected to shape the programme. However, the schedule is likely to remain tightly focused on official business. Sources indicate the King is not expected to meet Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, who is based in California, during the visit. The decision to proceed with this trip signals a clear effort to maintain diplomatic engagement with Washington, even as political differences persist. Earlier in the week, US President Donald Trump had taken a fresh swipe at Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, suggesting King Charles would have taken a different position on the war in Iran. Speaking to US media, President Trump said the King would have taken what he described as a very different stand, while acknowledging the monarch does not play a political role. The remarks are the latest in a series of criticisms directed at the Prime Minister, particularly over the UK's decision not to join US-led military action and its initial refusal to allow British bases to be used for strikes. Downing Street has maintained that its position is based on the British national interest, resisting pressure to escalate involvement in the conflict. And that question of national interest is now set to be tested at the ballot box. Voters across England head to the polls next month for local elections in what is shaping up to be a key moment for Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government. Early polling points to a more fragmented political landscape, with support shifting across multiple parties rather than moving in a single direction. Reform UK is targeting both Conservative and Labour voters, while the Green Party and Liberal Democrats are seeking to capitalise on dissatisfaction among traditional Labour supporters. Analysts say the results could be mixed, reflecting a broader realignment in British politics. For Labour, the message remains focused on stability, as ministers urge voters to stay the course amid economic pressure and global uncertainty. But with competition intensifying, the outcome is expected to provide a clearer indication of how voter sentiment is evolving and how secure that position really is. Those pressures are unfolding as the UK economy comes under renewed strain. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has warned that the war in the Middle East will have direct consequences for the UK economy as rising energy prices begin to feed through into growth and inflation. In an address to the nation, the Prime Minister said the impact of the conflict between Iran, the United States and Israel would shape the country's economic outlook in the months ahead. Disruption to the Strait of Hormuz, a critical route for global oil and gas supply, has pushed energy prices higher, creating a renewed cost shock for the UK as a net importer. Latest forecasts show growth for 2026 has been downgraded, while inflation is expected to rise again, reversing recent progress on price stability. The effects are already being felt, with higher fuel costs and expectations of further increases in household energy bills later this year. The Bank of England is now expected to delay interest rate cuts as it responds to renewed inflationary pressure, while the government faces limited room to introduce further support. Downing Street says the duration of the conflict will be key to determining the scale of the economic impact. So, what does this mean for the UK economy from here? I've been speaking with CEBR economist Dan Smith. Dan Smith, thanks so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. Let's start with the OECD outlook. Not great, especially if you compare UK growth this year to other comparable economies.
Yeah, not great at all. I think as a result of the ongoing disruption and conflict in the Middle East, the OECD, as have many economists, has downgraded its forecast for growth within the United Kingdom. What we're seeing is we think that's primarily going to be through an inflation channel. That's higher prices, specifically through motor fuels, through food, through energy prices. Is going to compress discretionary incomes, those being the incomes that consumers have beyond their essential spending. And that's going to really affect that spending, that consumption, that will be driving growth going forward.
Absolutely. The Middle East, you mentioned that the war going on there, it's not just the UK it's affecting everybody. But why do you think the UK is hit so severely?
I think there are probably a few reasons, and it's worth mentioning that the UK is not going to be the worst affected economy as a result of this conflict. I think the primary channel that we see is that the UK is more exposed, again, through that inflation lens. The UK, we have a greater reliance on imported liquefied natural gas. That's something has seen the price rise significantly, will probably continue to see its price rise significantly compared to other large economies. The United States, for example, nowhere near as dependent on imported liquefied natural gas in that way. China, not so much. Europe has a much stronger nuclear reliance, which stops it from having to rely on liquefied natural gas in that particular way. So what that means is that prices in the UK are likely to see a higher rise, which probably translates into a larger impact on growth compared to.
Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, she had an emergency virtual meeting with her G7 counterparts this week, I think urging them to transition to cleaner fuels, which of course will help the UK more. Do you think she's done enough? There are debates that there should be more support, like we saw at the start of the Ukraine-Russia war, just to help as a buffer for people already struggling with an ongoing cost of living crisis.
Yes, I think it's first worth acknowledging what support measures there are already there. The Ofgem price cap is currently set, so that's set to see energy bills fall going into the second quarter this year, despite the ongoing disruption. Of course, when prices are recalibrated for the third quarter, then households will see those energy price rises as well. There's also been the announced £50 million package, approximately, for low-income households who are still using heating oils. However, ultimately, we do expect that consumers are likely to very much feel the pinch of these price rises. The scope for policy intervention, in the sense, considering elevated borrowing costs, again a consequence of this high expected inflation, this scope has been quite reduced, and so we do anticipate that it is going to be probably quite tough times for UK consumers.
Yeah, that's what the Prime Minister said on television earlier this week. You've mentioned upward inflationary pressures. How bad is this crisis going to offset that 2% target set by the Bank of England?
Well, it's certainly going to offset it. I think initially there were plans before the war that the inflation could fall to target, or at very least very close to the target, from that second quarter, primarily driven by that reduction in energy bills. What we're going to see now is that it's very unlikely to get close to that target in this coming quarter. Our predictions is that it isn't very likely to be moving close to 2% until at least 2027 as a result of these renewed inflationary pressures, specifically coming in Q3 when household energy bills are recalibrated.
Yes, unemployment has historically, universally, been quite low in this country. It's ticking up. It has been ticking up over the months. Do you think this crisis could expand unemployment rates?
Oh, definitely. I think, well, UK businesses have been struggling with high labour costs that has really impacted and raised unemployment over the past year. We've seen rise to employer national insurance contributions. Those have had quite a big effect, large, arguably, on employment. Even before the war, they're expecting measures that are likely to raise labour costs, those being measures in the Employment Rights Bill, another real terms hike to the national minimum and living wages. What we see in terms of the impact on employment from the current developments is twofold. One is a cost increase. We've talked before about fuel prices, energy costs for businesses, those are going to rise. That's squeezing the margins from below. But then another side of this is this reduction in consumer demand, this reduction in business activity that's going to put downward pressure on the margins from the top, further squeezing that. What that means in practice is lower hiring sentiment, arguably, potentially as well, large numbers of layoffs.
Wow.
So we do anticipate that this ongoing crisis is likely to exacerbate the UK's unemployment situation. We foresee that employment will rise around 5.3% over 2026.
Got to ask you finally, I don't want to mention the B word, but I've got to, Brexit. It's been creeping into some of the op-eds this week because it appears as if we did have stronger relations with the EU, things may not be as bad. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think there is certainly arguments that stronger cooperation with the European Union could put upward pressure onto growth, predominantly through a stronger export channel, which could provide a boost to demand, especially at a time when demand is definitely expected to suffer. However, it is certainly worth noting that the primary effect that we're foreseeing from this crisis is through prices, is through costs,
yes.
And that's affecting us, that's affecting the European Union
yes.
equally. So on that respect, we don't foresee that there is much that could be changed as a result of close cooperation with the European Union.
Dan Smith, Senior Economist at the Centre for Economic Business Research. Thank you for your analysis today.
Thanks very much.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global, the United Kingdom tightens its immigration system, raising visa fees across the board while accelerating removals under a new agreement with Nigeria, in a move that could reshape travel, study and work opportunities for thousands. As costs rise and enforcement strengthens, what does this mean for Nigerians navigating the system? From students and skilled workers to families and businesses. We'll be getting legal insight from legal consultant Dr. Jennifer Obaseki. And as usual, I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London, where global power, policy and markets intersect. Shortly, I'll be discussing immigration rules with Dr. Jennifer Obaseki. But until then, here's a breakdown of some of the biggest business news stories of the week. Nigeria's Oando has signed a production sharing contract for an onshore oil block in Angola, marking a significant step in its expansion beyond domestic operations. The deal gives Oando a 45% operating stake in Block KON 13 in the Kwanza Basin, an area with strong exploration potential. The move positions the firm as an operator in a new market as it looks to scale production and strengthen its presence across Africa. It follows recent asset acquisitions in Nigeria and signals a broader strategy to grow reserves and drive long-term output. European officials are urging citizens to reduce driving and air travel as fuel supplies from the Middle East come under increasing strain. The warning comes as some of the final shipments of diesel and jet fuel from the region arrive in Europe, following disruption linked to the Strait of Hormuz. Analysts say shortages could emerge within weeks, particularly for aviation fuel, with limited replacement supply available. Officials warn sustained high prices may force businesses and consumers to cut usage, raising the risk of wider economic disruption. US airline Delta has agreed to use Amazon's satellite network to deliver in-flight Wi-Fi in a move that intensifies competition in the aviation connectivity market. The deal will see Amazon's low Earth orbit system installed on hundreds of aircraft from 2028, offering a faster and more reliable onboard internet. It marks a significant step for Amazon as it competes with SpaceX Starlink, which has already secured multiple airline partnerships. Airlines are increasingly investing investing in high-speed connectivity as they look to attract passengers and enhance the travel experience. The UK is tightening its immigration framework, combining higher visa costs with faster enforcement measures in a shift that will directly impact thousands of Nigerians. From the 8th of April, the Home Office will raise fees across most visa categories, increasing the cost of visitor visas, student routes, skilled worker applications, settlement and citizenship, adding to concerns about affordability as demand remains strong. Alongside this, a new UK-Nigeria migration agreement signed during last month's state visit is accelerating removals of individuals with no legal right to remain. Under the British deal, British authorities can now issue their own travel documentation for returns, eliminating delays linked to Nigerian emergency travel certificates and enabling faster deportations. The government says the move is aimed at strengthening border control, tackling immigration fraud and disrupting organised networks, while maintaining pathways for legitimate travel and investment. For Nigerians with valid visas or legal status, there is no change, but for overstayers and failed asylum applicants, the risk of rapid removal is now significantly higher. Together, the measures point to a more controlled and enforcement-driven system, raising costs while tightening compliance. So what does this mean in practice? I've been speaking with legal consultant Dr. Jennifer Obaseki. Dr. Jennifer Obaseki, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. It's always a pleasure feasting upon your immigration knowledge. We saw the handshakes, we saw the headlines, state visit. Not all of the stories were welcomed. One of them was this UK-Nigeria immigration deal. Not really sure about the details because there were a lot of rebuttals put out by federal government.
Yes.
Can you talk to me about what you know and how it's going to affect Nigerians living in the UK?
All right. So first of all, the diaspora community that have their papers sorted don't need to be worried.
Okay.
It's for people who have not got any status or exhausted their immigration application, so been refused asylum, overstayers. Basically, if your papers are not in order, then you may need to be a bit worried. But they've said it's going to take 3 years to fully enact.
Enact what?
Enact a better level of collaboration with regards to removals.
Right.
Yes.
Because typically we don't really engage with the Home Office, or does Nigeria engage with Home Office when it comes to removals? I'm talking about the High Commission now.
Yeah, so when there's the need to, there obviously has to be confirmation of travel documents for those who've exhausted their rights.
Guilt.
Confirmation.
Guilt.
Yes, confirmation of identification and nationality. So we're thinking about people who've been sentenced at the end of their prison sentence, no passport, they're known to be Nigerian, no valid travel document. Obviously with the Nigerian identification requirements, those people still need to have their ID taken and for processing of their passports. But then we also have to think about failed asylum seekers. Currently there's over 950 failed asylum seekers.
Wow.
And when it comes down to people in prisons, there's over 1,000.
Goodness.
Nigerians who at the end of their sentence may be removed, and that's those that are known to be Nigerian. So you can think about those who are, their nationality is in question, as it were. So there has to be that collaboration between the Home Office and the Nigerian Embassy and High Commission, but also children as well. So children who parents may pass away, and also who go through the care system whose parents were not documented. So there is a strong need for that relationship and better collaboration, because you don't want people languishing in detention facilities or let me say in limbo, waiting to be removed. So hopefully this will make sure that that does not happen.
I'm happy you're smiling and you're optimistic, because on the flip side of that deal, there's also mentions of expanding legitimate business visas. How meaningful is this for Nigerian entrepreneurs and investors? Are you hopeful?
I'm hopeful.
Okay.
Because lots of people have heard about all of the bad press on the skilled worker visa. Those are people who've unfortunately been given disingenuous appointments. There's been no proper job for them.
Online CV recruiters.
All this stuff. So when it comes down to innovation founders and business people, do think about whether you want to have the expansion visa for members of your staff to come here and go to meetings, trade fairs, innovation founder, the global talent.
That's right.
These are things that people need to look into and not just think, oh, I need to come and work abroad. Those visas, though, they have their restrictions. you can only come and do permitted levels of work, so it will be for specific purposes. So don't get me wrong, the skilled worker visa is still there, but now that there's been all this negative response from the political parties about how it's going to be made harder for people, and already there's restrictions on, dependence and the cost, as we've seen with the applications going up. It's important that people look at what their real alternatives are, because with the skilled worker visa, again, you're not going to get your indefinite leave to remain after 5 years anymore, as they've said they're going to make changes. So if you're going to be switching into one of these other business routes, maybe you've established a company, you want to see what you actually can do, whether you're going to go on and sponsor yourself, whether you're going to establish a company in Nigeria, then send a representative here, or you be that company representative that comes here, or whether you're in tech and you're going to do something that's innovative, and then find yourself in a position where you can do a different type of legitimate visa application.
Many options.
Yeah, but get the advice. It's important people get the right advice as well.
We've got you here. Thank you for that advice. Free as well and invaluable. You mentioned the visa fees rising. I want to talk about that because this is just every single year. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of pounds.
It's a big concern, because what it does is it pushes people further away from being able to regularize themselves, especially if they're somebody who may want to apply for their indefinite leave to remain, but they just can't get those extra hundreds of pounds to do it. It means it pushes them away from getting fully integrated into society and applying for naturalization. The one thing people do need to realize is immigration is going to get even harder. So if you are eligible for naturalization, try and get it done. I know
don't delay.
Don't delay.
Or fear. A lot of times it's fear, isn't it?
Well, it's only going to get harder.
Or procrastination, laziness.
Procrastination and the fees.
The fees, yes.
And the fees.
Of course.
So please, if you are, and if you're over the age of 65, you don't have to do the exams, you don't have to do the tests. So please do it if you can raise the money. If you want your documents checked, some local authorities help check for the documents.
Does that still happen?
Few of them do, but if, again, go online, see what help you can get. There's organisations, there's charities, there's practices out there. We also offer a free legal clinic that's limited.
Tell us a bit more about that.
So those who can go online and book, you go to legalpal.com and ask for your 15 minutes free. We do it online, or you can come to any one of the legal clinics. We've got one that's starting in Manor House, and we're getting another one starting in Watford.
Wow.
So again,
but you're going to share those details with Channels Business Global, as I know you always do, Dr. Jen.
Absolutely.
We're running out of time.
Important.
I've got to ask, for Nigerians watching and planning to apply to come to the UK, what practical steps should they take now to navigate these changes? I know you've given us, but could you give us an overview?
Number one, make sure that you actually qualify for the route that you're going into. Number two, make sure that you get proper legal advice from somebody who's qualified and insured, whether it's a solicitor or an OIC practitioner or a barrister with direct access. Number six, make sure that your documentation is gathered in the correct manner. Make sure it's legitimate. Don't go to agents who are constructing documents for you. Get them from the right source. Number six, if you are not sure, don't just run into things, because you can hear about the fees that have increased. It's a lot of money to have go, especially if you're doing things in the wrong way. Then number seven, remember that at the end of the day, the world is a global place. A lot of the things you can do online. And if you're coming into the UK to work for somebody else, whereas you could establish your own company in your country of origin and come in on a better footing, that might be the way forward. So get some business advice as well as the immigration advice.
Wow, always so wonderful. Thank you so much. Really fascinating listening to you, and thank you for all of the help and support that you provide everyone. Dr. Jennifer Obaseki, thank you so much. Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.